Hi, welcome to Gospel Preview again. This is Reverend Alex Leach, Director of Formation at Trinity Cathedral, and joining me are Eileen Harvey-Qualset. Do you want to say hi, Eileen?
Hello.
Hi. And Debbie James.
Hi.
Hi, Debbie. Well, our Gospel reading today, or this week for Sunday, is Luke chapter 8, verses 26 to 39. Luke chapter 8, verses 26 to 39. As is our practice, I will read our gospel reading. I invite you to ponder and listen for a word, a phrase, an image that might stand out to you. Jesus and his disciples arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. As they stepped out on land, a man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on the hillside, a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank and into the lake and were drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then the people came out to see what had happened, and when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed in his right mind, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. And all of the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. Hmm. I'm wondering if there was a word or a phrase or an image that jumped out at you to begin our reflection.
Well, I think for me it's the he did not live in a house but in the tombs.
Oh.
Um, Down at the bottom, I see, then all the people, wait a minute, then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, both of those. What jumps out to me? I mean, for me, it's always hard when I'm doing the reading to notice like what stands out right now. Legion always stands out to me, but today, Today was so he gave them permission. It was the demon going into the swine and the running off the cliff, and he gave them permission.
Mhm.
Hmm. I'm going to keep going around our circle a little bit. Eileen, will you tell us a little bit more about why that phrase stood out to you? He didn't live in a home, but in the tombs.
Yeah, it struck me that um that when I'm caught up in my own um stuff, you
Yeah.
know, that I don't seek out things that make me necessarily feel better. I have to roll in it for a while and whine and complain. And I thought, oh my gosh, how often am I living in a tomb?
Mm, mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's a very good.
Mm. And I'm with you, meaning I'm also a human being, and so right when I am stressed and upset and things are going well, I do not immediately go for the thing that will actually help me the most, whatever
Yeah.
that is. I
Well,
often reach for a quicker solution, but will feel crappier later.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Um,
sometimes sometimes it takes a while to get out of that. So
I know.
yeah.
I agree. It helps me. It makes me think of I think you and I were on the call, Eileen, when we were talking about the man who had been sitting by the pool for 38 years or whatever it was, and Jesus says, "Do you want to be made well?" Right? And we talked about how maybe that question isn't like angry Jesus, but it's like compassionate Jesus.
Mhm.
And so it makes me, and I don't know, that whole conversation is flooding through my brain as I hear you say the like, sometimes we have to sit in the tomb for a while. Like
Yeah.
again, Jesus doesn't chastise this man for
Mm-mm.
being stuck where he has been for however long, he hasn't worn clothes for a long time. I noticed that too this reading. I hadn't noticed that before. Um, there's some comfort, I think, in the like um had different spiritual teacher once said it. You know, uh, God's waiting for us to come home, but God doesn't have any timetable on that. Like we can wander for God's got time. God's sitting there being like, "You're gonna come home at some point, and that's gonna be okay." But it's not on like we sometimes say on God's time, but I think it's also like as long as what we understand, like in this context, I think that means in God's patience, and God's just like takes as long as it takes.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, it's like when you're ready, I'm just gonna sit here, I'm gonna
Right,
drink my glass of water and look out at the ocean, and when you show up, I'll do that with you, you know.
right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I will be with you. Um, because it is. I think in our current culture, which is very quick fix, is in terms of including in terms of our pop psychology, right? Like do these three things and your anxiety will just wash away, right?
Yeah.
I've done the three things. My
Yeah.
anxiety did not wash away instantaneously. That wasn't my experience. It helped. I'm not, the three things help, whatever they are,
Hmm.
but it's not, right? And so I think in our modern culture, that can be hard for us, that sometimes you have to sit in the tomb. Jesus sat in the tomb for 3 days before he got up,
Hmm.
you know? You know? Yeah. Debbie, did you want to say more about yours? The word that jumped out to you about their fear? I think there's some connection there.
I, I was just thinking, I'm outer focused. You guys
Mm,
are right where, that scripture about, first take the beam out of your own eye before you,
yeah,
yeah, dealing with other people's splinters. And I'm
Hmm.
not, I'm too busy looking at other people's splinters.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, like, what would I do if I had to deal with that? And we see Wednesday night dinner.
yeah,
That's what they see. They see people like that. Um,
yeah.
Friday morning respite, it's scary to me. But
Yeah.
what I didn't understand, the scripture that I picked out, number 37, is why did the people of the town then want him to leave? Why would
Right.
they want him to leave?
Yeah.
Because like he fixed the he
Right.
fixed the situation. So
Yeah.
you know, and
I,
okay, so the pigs were collateral damage, but
yeah.
he fixed the situation, and he allowed the demons asked to go into the pigs, and he
Right.
said, okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so it wasn't his idea, but
Mhm.
why are the people afraid of him?
Can we wonder, before I give an answer, can we wonder about that? Do you have thoughts, Debbie, why they might have been afraid, or Eileen, or?
I don't have thoughts about why they were afraid. What really struck me was they begged Jesus not to send them back into the abyss. So
The
they,
demons, yeah.
yeah, the demons. So then they go into the pigs and then they drown. So
Right.
don't they just go right back to the
Back to
abyss?
the
Or
abyss.
No, I think they are still to this day possessing pig carcasses. Maybe they're now decayed to bones at the bottom of the lake. No, I'm just teasing. Um, Tradition holds. No. Uh, well, I mean, I have a couple of responses to Debbie, but I'm always shy because I worry that I make gospel preview too much of just another preaching pulpit for me, and whether I'm doing the right
I
thing.
don't
But
care.
I know.
Oh, you do,
Um, no, it's okay. I mean, I mean, there's no right answer. Let's start with that. This is a great moment to explore what we're teaching kids in Sunday school. What we teach kids in Sunday school at Trinity Cathedral is not answers about here's what this Bible story means. We present Bible stories and then we really work hard at trying to get the kids to use their imagination and engage with the story. And so it's a great moment to ask, I wonder why they would be scared. And then kids would popcorn all sorts of different answers, right? And the point of the teacher is not to say, that's the right answer, but is rather to sort of entertain. And when it's not in the story, when sometimes the teacher does need to give the guardrails. Well, the story does say this, but in a situation like this, the story doesn't really tell us why they're scared. And so it's a good moment to ponder what I was taught in seminary, which is that it doesn't give the answer because there isn't a singular answer. There are many answers, right? There are layers of answers to this question of why would they be scared? It makes me think about one possibility is the power of Jesus, right? What kind of power is it that could send demons into a herd of pigs and send them all off a cliff? I don't know if I feel, powers can be scary. Even if power is used for good, when's it not going to be used for good? When am I going to be sent into the pigs? Right? Or whatever, right? Or just the awe-inspiringness. It's sometimes why we say people fear God because it's just so overwhelming. It's so big. It's so like intense. So there's that answer. That's a possibility. It's just like,
yeah.
whoa, this guy can do that? Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if we want him around. One answer is the the it's sort of a combo answer. The combination of the pigs going into the water, so there are pigs. That means we're not dealing with Jews, right? We're dealing with Gentiles. So this is a Gentile community. Uh, it's on the other side of the lake. Pigs would be a major economic force for them, especially since there's no competition on the other side of the lake. That's my
Yeah.
21st century capitalism coming out. There's
Yeah.
no competition over on that side of the lake. We have a monopoly on pigs because they think pigs are unclean. So it probably, the Jewish people on the other side were big fishers. And the other side probably fished too, but if you're gonna, all of this is ruled by Rome, right? Rome rules all of it. And so if one side's really got the fishing down, get the other side to do pigs, and now you've diversified your economy. Um, and so, and the word legion is a very loaded word. Legion is the word for the Roman, a unit of Roman soldiers. It's typically about 100. So that's a legion is a group of Roman soldiers. And so the combination of these two facts speaks to that Jesus really disrupts the day-to-day life.
Mhm.
Jesus comes into this community and he disrupts their economy and he disrupts their political situation. Tells the legion to go get out of here, go, and sort of now going back to the Jewish side, sort of insulting the Romans by being like, go be a bunch of pigs, basically calling the Romans a bunch of pigs that jump and they're stupid because they jump off a cliff, right? I mean, these are just possible answers.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
one possible answer to that question
That's
that people
good.
have come to is this like, well, it's actually a little bit of political Jesus is thumbing his nose at the powers that be, and the Gerasenes know what happens when you thumb your nose at Rome as they come and crush you. So like get this guy out of here because we don't want Rome.
Mm-hmm.
He's already messed up our economy and now he's calling the Romans pigs. Like, well, I don't know if we want this guy around. That's
That's
another
right.
possible answer. Again, none of these
That's
are the
good.
right answer.
Mm-hmm.
They're answers.
But I
So the,
think it's always
yeah,
useful with your experience and training to pull out things like that. Legion was a group of soldiers, and as soon as you
yeah,
say that, it's like, oh, you
Oh,
know,
right.
I go into a different area. Yeah.
It does. It sends you to another area. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also wonder about it's still on that same theme of status quo. Like
Mm-hmm.
this guy's been crazy and living in the graves for
yes.
years, for a long time, it says.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly he's better and he's fine and he's just like gonna be one of us again. Like, change is hard for humans, even when it is positive change. I don't know if
Yeah.
you noticed that in your life, but
Yeah.
like I notice it at church. When we want to change something, even if we think it's a totally positive change that's going to help lots of people, there can be this resistance, this reticence, this I don't want change to happen. And so it can be kind of scary that we've all been used to Crazy Bill. Crazy Bill lives out in the graves and we chain him up every once in a while and then he breaks out and it's whatever, it's part of our dance. But now Crazy Bill is gonna be a blacksmith. He's gonna live among he's gonna take care of some pigs and live with us. Like you
Well,
know.
and I know that anxiety. I worked at Camarillo State Hospital, and we worked with um, mentally ill and developmentally disabled
Yeah.
individuals. And when better medication comes up and someone gets put on a medication that is more helpful, I find myself, I was still leery. It was like, okay, let's give this
Right.
time,
You're gonna talk.
and I'm just gonna kind of be polite, but I'm not walking next to the area he's sitting, kind of a
Yeah,
thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Normal, very normal.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So again, none of these are the right answer, but they're all possibilities to this really great question you have, Debbie, of why,
Really
which
good.
I think we can then extract from that, like Eileen's doing, to our world. Why are people afraid of Jesus?
Mhm.
The guy says some tough stuff that doesn't always jive with how our world is.
Mhm.
The guy can make people well, but do we want those people to be well? Right? Are we ready for them to be well? And are we ready to be called into community with whoever that Jesus might call? Right? I mean, we are, maybe we aren't,
Mhm.
sometimes. Am I ready to be neighborly with Crazy Bill? I've named this guy for some reason Crazy Bill.
Now, it also says in scripture that we should be able to do the same things. We joke about it, you
Right.
know, Friday morning respite or Wednesday night dinner about, putting our hands on somebody who's just really acting crazy and
Yeah.
casting the demon out and they're okay.
Right.
But that I haven't seen that happen. And
No.
so, yeah, yeah.
But we do it with young people.
What do you
When
mean?
when your child is having a tantrum, you come
Yeah.
over and you lay their hands on them and you say, okay, let's relax, let's, and then maybe they keep it up for a while, but you keep coming back and putting your hands on them. And even as teenagers, I'd be upset about something, and the first thing my mom would do would put her hand in the center of my back.
Mm.
And we may not think that
Mm-hmm.
we're doing that, but
Yeah.
just the simple, when
Yeah.
one feels safe, the simpleness of just touching a person in a safe location, like a shoulder, you know, um,
Mm. Can have such a calming effect. It
yeah,
can. And is that what we're talking about here? Yeah.
yeah.
That
Wow.
made me that made me wonder. I had no answer on why the pigs and the abyss and the that, but then it just occurred to me as you were saying that, Eileen, I wonder if that's part of the answer too, because I know that anxiety, I mean, we're sort of psychologizing demons, and some people are okay with that and some people aren't. So I'm going to give that note. But if we keep on this track, sometimes anxiety needs something to do. Like it's not enough to just be still and breathe, right? Sometimes I need to go on a walk. Sometimes I need to play with a fidget toy. Sometimes I need like a thing. So the pigs are definitely a thing, as opposed to just like be calm and connect with God, right? There's that. I wonder about that.
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder about the maybe the like the delusion of death. As that again being the placeholder for demons. The delusion of death is that somehow you can avoid it, right? Just send us into the pigs. Like that'll be fine. We'll just go into the pigs. We'll be nice and quiet in the pigs. But they still end up in a grave, in a watery grave, but in a grave, right? And so that sort of lie that death tells us that, or fear tells us that, you can somehow avoid death if you do the right things, if you jump through the right hoops, Um, so I wonder about that with its just delusional thinking on Legion's part. They're not thinking, they're lying, they're self-deceived. They think it'll be a solution, but it's really not. Jesus knows that, and that's why he gives them permission, maybe. He's like, sure, if that's how you want to go about it, fine. Not nice to the pigs, but it's not nice to the farmers who now are out of a lot of
Yeah,
economic
yeah.
money, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but perhaps. Hmm.
How timely is that, being that
Yeah.
you first logged on what we were talking about, and then now we're dealing, this is even worse.
Ugh.
Oh, I don't know which is worse, actually.
Are you talking about the vampires or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And
Can you say
sinners, yeah.
more just because we don't have that on this recording, but you all were talking about vampires.
Yes, yeah.
And how do you see that connected to this?
It's the vampires are, we see them as not, how can they be saved from that? I mean,
Hmm.
that's what um the movie, what's that movie that Tom Cruise and
Hmm.
um Tom Cruise was
Good.
in,
Oh, there was a few movies. Anne Rice's book,
Anne Rice's book,
Interview with a Vampire.
Interview with a Vampire, and what he was
Yeah.
doing was wandering around and trying to, not Tom Cruise, but
Okay.
Brad Pitt, he was wandering around trying to be saved from that life.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Because he didn't want that life. He
Right.
saw his death,
Yeah.
um and this guy actually, without actually, this guy never asked, the demons asked for him.
Right.
He just runs up to Jesus, and Jesus frees him
Yeah.
from these demons. So
Right.
imagine that, this whole thing about vampires and sinners, and then this guy who's demon possessed, living in the tombs, could be related in that way. This guy gets pulled out of
Yeah.
that life,
Yeah.
and he didn't really ask,
He didn't really. No.
but he ran up to him,
Yeah.
which, what good fortune is that?
Mm-hmm.
And back to your earlier comment, um, Jesus didn't ask. Well, not really. Yeah, he asked the man at the
Cool. Yeah.
pool,
Cool.
do you want to be healed? And there's no indication of an answer. And then Jesus,
Right. The man doesn't answer.
he
The
doesn't
man
answer.
doesn't.
And Jesus just healed him.
Mhm.
Anyway,
And so, yeah. So
Yeah.
how many
what
times does Jesus keep my mouth shut that I'm
Eh,
unaware of? You know?
what great good fortune that that man had after 38 years. What great good fortune did this guy have after being in the tombs for so long?
right.
Just it was an encounter.
Yeah.
And the vampire figure in Interviewing with a Vampire, Brad, I don't know if Anne Rice wrote anything about him in the end. Was he ever saved from that? I don't know, because I couldn't read her books. They were too flowery. I mean, I could watch the movies, but I couldn't read the books.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know what happened to the Brad
Um,
figure.
yeah.
I mean, the Louis figure.
I don't know, but you all are recognizing a really interesting trend, which is right. The person is not necessarily saying yes. They're not necessarily asking for this healing, but they're
Not
getting
even
it.
asking.
You know, it's happening anyways for them. You know, avoiding the least comfortable reading of that, right? Well, God just randomly picks some people and randomly doesn't pick other people, right? Which is a terrible, terrible thing. And there are Christian theologies that would say that, you know.
And
So avoiding that reading.
those
Oh,
people who theologize that kind of stuff, I'm not quite sure that that is the right
no, right. Yeah.
approach to
That's
that.
not my, no, right. I agree.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's not always the right approach, because just when you think you've got the theology down, you read something else that he did that's, counter to that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Fully agree, right? It's a rather Calvin-esque read of scripture that sort of has this idea of predestination, that some souls are somehow predestined for salvation, joy, healing, whatever, and other souls are predestined for hell, basically. Uh, and-
I was talking to somebody who was telling me, oh, this person is a Calvinist, is that okay with? And I said, oh, I can navigate around that,
sure, yeah, yeah,
I can figure it out.
yeah,
I've been around that before, so,
right.
but no, you can't, you can't
No.
theologize.
I agree. I agree. I think that's really problematic. So to avoid that, I think it's helpful. It sort of goes back to the God's waiting for us just to come home, and it doesn't matter from God's perspective. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take in another lens. So that sort of idea with like um, um, resurrection
Mhm.
isn't in the various forms of resurrection. This being a small resurrection, a moment. This person gets their life back. Um, isn't time bound, right? It's not, well, I've been dead, I've been in the tombs for 4 days. Jesus did it in 3. I guess I'm done. It's been a week. Like, you know what I mean? But like, there's always that hope. There's
Yeah.
always that hope for release from captivity, whatever
Mhm.
that captivity looks like. That hope is never gone, even if it's been 36 years, even if it's been he hasn't worn clothes for a long time. It's there's that hope that freedom is always possible and the various kinds of freedom. Um, there's the connection with like sort of again the power of God. I think people would generally, just like in our culture, see um, chronic illness, and I'm going to include chronic demon possession. Um, the longer it is, the worse it is, right? Like if, oh, well, if, you've had this whatever symptom for a year, that's terrible. You've had this symptom for 10 years? Oh my God, like that, there's no hope for that, right? And so somewhat of the power that God's more powerful than whatever the worst thing you can imagine is, even a demon possession that's a legion of demons and it's lasted for a long time. Yeah, God's more powerful even than that. There's some of that as a possibility. Um,
And the fact that this guy believed it so much, that he asked to go with Jesus. He realized that he was clear, he was free now to go forward in his
Yeah.
life. And I think that's really important also, because getting to that point of hope,
Yeah.
and understanding that you are now clear, you're free. This
Yeah.
is a good thing. This is a good thing. Is miraculous in itself, I think.
And I'm glad you brought our attention to that part because it's again one of my favorite parts of scripture where someone says they want to follow Jesus and Jesus says no. I love it. I love when Jesus does something that really turns our heads and go, wait a minute, what?
What?
Or just
How
like
come?
act so human or whatever. I remember many times sitting with people and for various reasons why I might think this might have been helpful to them to look at, right? Like, here's an example where someone wants to follow Jesus and Jesus says no. Now, he does say some more things, but how fascinating. But right, he says, well, actually, your job is to stay here and to talk to these people, and what I hear in my head is and soften their hearts, going back to they're scared. So they're scared, right, of Jesus and they want him to leave. Jesus says, okay, I'll leave, right? Jesus isn't in the business of forcing himself on anyone. If they say no, he's okay walking away.
Mm.
He's not going to force himself on them, but he still cares about them. He still has compassion for them. He still wants them to come home. So he leaves this guy and says, no, your job is to actually stay here. And my translation in my head and soften their hearts, help them to come out of that fear, help them to see that this is something they can actually trust, by seeing your life, seeing how you live, seeing that you now are this free and clean person. um, and it's fascinating because we often think, well, I've got to follow Jesus. I've got to give everything up, leave behind my friends and family,
Go into the ministry like
go
you.
into the minute of some kind, right? And sometimes that is what you got to do, right? There's plenty of those stories in scripture. Sometimes you do have to leave everything behind, go off on a big adventure, whatever that means in your life, you know, navigate uncertain waters. And sometimes that's not your job. Sometimes your job is to stay right where you are with the people you know and love and have been around you all your life or whatever, but proclaim the gospel right there. Um, right? And so it's tricky. I liked what you said, Debbie, about um, theology people make these elaborate theologies, and then you can always find a scripture that kind of pokes a hole in it, right? I think we've done a lot of theologizing in the church that we need to go out, go out, go out, and that is like true. 100%. I don't. There's lots in the Bible that say, yes, go make disciples of all nations. Go out. But then there are stories like this where someone says, okay, I'm ready to go. And Jesus says, actually, you're not getting on this boat.
Yeah.
You're not going across the water with me. That's not your calling. Your calling is to actually stay right here with the people you know and love and, or don't love and they don't love you, but you know them at least, right? Stay in the place you know, but live differently in that place. Live in a new way in that place that you have been planted in. Um, and so there aren't any. This is why Sunday school, our philosophy is that Sunday school teachers shouldn't give answers of here's what the story means, because yeah, sometimes it means that, and sometimes that's the lesson, and sometimes the lesson is very much the opposite
Mhm.
of, so in this case, go out versus stay in,
Mhm.
you know. So I always love this. I always love to talk about this passage with people who are struggling with that. I need to be doing more out there in the world of various kinds. And I'm like, well, sometimes Jesus says, actually just stay. Do it differently, but stay. You know, live in a new way, live in a way that's more free, less demon possessed, less fear, less anxiety, less death. But do it right there.
So that means that we don't have to go around casting demons out of homeless people.
We do not. We do not. Yeah,
But wouldn't
trick.
that be amazing?
That would be amazing. I mean, some people certainly think they
Then
do.
they can come back and they're clean and they're
Right,
healed. And they're
right, right, right. Hmm.
What do you have to say about all that? Eileen is acting crazy.
No, it's not. I just I love these resurrection
Yeah.
stories because then I think back on my life about this thing happened and how could that have ever happened? And I'm like, oh my gosh, was that one of my resurrection stories?
Wow.
You know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then, did I eh, then I'm like, oh man, I missed it, you
Did
know?
I take advantage of it properly? Did I invest properly?
Right.
Did I invest my talents and then turn back and come back with more talents? Or did I bury my talent?
And
Right.
did I miss a liminal moment that I
Mm,
could carry with me the rest of my life? I have
right.
liminal moments that I will carry me for the rest of my life, but um
Right.
there's some other ones that I don't think I really comprehended what was happening. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think the disciples too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, when they're hanging around Jesus, I think there's plenty of time, I imagine, when Jesus does something. And I mean, in John's version, I know we're reading Luke today, but in John's version, his ministry is 3 years long, right? In the others, it's 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
But so if we go with, that's one of the things people think John's probably a little more accurate on, right? Jesus probably did not only do ministry for 1 year. It seems unlikely. We don't know
Mm-hmm.
how many years, but you know, more than one probably. Um, but uh, especially if you hung out with the guy for 3 years, you'd start getting used to some things,
Yeah.
right? You just sort of get, there's no another loaves and fish moment. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Just like multiply this, make that stuff into wine, whatever, right?
I don't think they ever got used to that
You don't
stuff.
think so?
No, I think they just went, oh my God, what did he do? He did what?
This
You
time,
know,
right?
and unfortunately
I love it.
for him and maybe for all of us, he did not have a black woman following behind him going, what the, out loud to
Right.
him, so
He at
that
least didn't
he
write it
could
down.
say,
He at least
oh,
didn't write it
you're
down.
not supposed to say that, or yes, okay, all right, I'll explain it to you since you're the one who's shouting it out. And, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
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 I think that every time he did something, they went, what now? What are we
Right.
supposed to do with this now?
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
never expected him to
Right.
do the things that he did.
There. Never got old. Yeah, it's possible. I love it.
But that's why Peter was the way he was, because Peter wanted the structure. No, you're not gonna go to Israel. We're all gonna get in trouble, or you're not gonna go to Jerusalem. We're all
Right.
gonna get in trouble. They're just gonna snatch you. You know who? Yeah,
Hmm.
no, you're crazy. You're not going.
Hmm. Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Any one of us who wanted structure would have been putting boundaries around whatever it was that he was doing.
And we still are.
We still are.
We can welcome these people into our church, but not those people.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, it's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, yeah, we do. Mhm.
Even, yeah. 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 I could just add to the list, but I agree. I agree with the point you're making.
Mhm.
But as
Mm,
long as we can quote scriptures and quote poetry and sing songs about hope, it
mhm.
gives people the idea of possibility. It maybe opens their mind
Right.
to possibilities that
Right.
they can't see. And I'm
Yeah.
speaking to myself there too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we just heard that too from Eileen, meaning like reflecting on the scripture passage in this conversation. Eileen, you were sharing, made you reflect on some moments in your life history where, oh, maybe that was a resurrection moment for me, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and I guess the point I was trying to get to there was to say it's never too late again. Meaning it's not like, oh, I missed it. I missed being able to savor it in the moment. That might be true. That might
Yeah.
be true. I may have missed the ability to savor it in the moment, but it is still, once I recognize it as a moment of grace, um, it is grace. I don't know how else to say that, right? It is something I can hold on to now.
Mhm.
But do you think
Um,
that Peter had time to look back and go, oh, gee, I missed that. How could I have?
yeah.
And actually, he didn't have time.
Maybe. I mean, I mean, uh, I I guess what I'm also thinking about is how much didn't get written down. Meaning,
Yeah.
John is the again John, where you keep alluding to the gospel we're not reading, but John at the end of the gospel does say very explicitly, there were a lot more things Jesus did, but there's no time to write it all down right now. There's no space, If I wrote everything Jesus did, the volumes would fill the whole world, which, maybe is a slight hyperbole, but is I get the point he's making, right? I don't have time to talk about it all. I don't have the space to talk about it all. These things were written though, so that you might believe and be saved, right? And so I remember my spiritual director. Um, I think she asked me once, well, like, can you think about the moments where Jesus rested? And I was like, no, I can't think of a single moment where Jesus rested. And she's like, well, let's think about, okay, so we walked from Capernaum to Jerusalem in the story, right? I'm like, yeah. Well, let's look at that on a map. Oh, that's like a 4-day walking journey. We don't get anything about what happened in those 4 days, right? And I'm like, oh. And she's like, yeah, we have no clue. Maybe they sat by the lake. Maybe they had some nice dates out of a tree. Maybe whatever. Someone invited them into their house and they had a lovely dinner. Who knows what happened in those 4 days it takes to walk? The story just goes from they left Capernaum and the next sentence is, and they arrived in Jerusalem. Well, a lot would have happened in between there as a normal human being walking from one place to another place. They're not, Jesus is never described except for the donkey as riding on animals as he transports around all these places.
Mhm.
He's not on, he doesn't have,
He couldn't afford that all the time.
that's right, he couldn't. That's right. The guy was pretty poor.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, so the point being, I wonder how many things Peter might have done that we just were never recorded, right? They weren't. Um, Perhaps they missed. This is a joke. They missed the publishing date. Peter realized it was a moment of grace, but darn, the Gospels are already written and out there. It's too late. All the Gospels were written after Peter died. But anyways, none of the apostles actually even saw the Gospels.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Uh, but yeah,
I, I'm looking at next week's lectionary or this Sunday's lectionary. Yeah, it's Luke 9. And we keep referring to John. So I was
I
looking.
know. I'm sorry. I keep jumping
And
into
that's
John.
okay.
But
I
let's ground because we're here at the end. Let's ground. We'll come back to our actual gospel reading for this Sunday. I'm going to read it one last time and ask, what do you need to carry? What do you need to take from this for your week? What do you need to hold on to? Um, so this is Luke chapter 8, verses 26 to 39. Jesus and his disciples arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. As he stepped out on land, a man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on the hillside, a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they ran off and told it to the city and the country. Then people came out to see what had happened, and when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So they went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. And I'm wondering what you might need to take from this passage today. What do you need to hold on to?
I'm gonna say, return home and tell how much God has done for you.
Mm. Mm. Do you want to say anything more about that? But that is a complete
But
sentence.
there's so many levels to that.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking about doing something else, go back, you know,
Mm.
and talk about what God has done for me.
Mhm.
These are weird times in this country. I wish I could get out, but no, stay here.
Mm. Mhm.
Stay here and talk about what God has done for me.
Mm. Mm. Thank you. Mm.
I'm still thinking about those tombs.
Yeah,
Like,
that's okay.
Yeah. Oh,
how
yeah.
how does one avoid tombs? And
Mm.
instead of
Yeah,
living in the sunshine and with friends and with family and
yeah,
just people you don't even know. But
right.
that's boy, that's a big question for me right now.
I hear it. I hear it. It's a good one to ask.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I hope that you continue to ponder that. What will keep me out of the tombs? What helps me or where?
No more tombs for you.
Right, right. Where is Jesus maybe meeting me in the tombs?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because Jesus, if this guy's been living in the tombs, wherever Jesus landed on land must have been near them. You know, so Jesus meets him in the tombs. Where is Jesus meeting you in the tombs? Where are there paths that God, can lead you out? Uh,
Mhm.
I know. What am I sitting with? I have to write a sermon. That's one thing, but for just the 8 o'clock. Hmm, The thing that's coming up, but I don't know if it's the thing I need to sit with, but probably is since it's coming up. Um, I actually thought of it earlier. The reason that phrase, like he gave them permission, stood out to me, and I need to go look at the Greek on that sentence later. Um, it almost sounds like compassion. And what is that? That Jesus has compassion even for the demons,
Mhm.
right? Like, oof, that's a lot of compassion. That's a lot of compassion to have compassion even, and I could be wrong. Like I said, I need to go look at the Greek and see what is the actual Greek there when he says he gives them permission. But in the English language with that translation, for me, that really lands as an act of compassion. These creatures are begging, please don't do this terrible thing to us. Please let us just do this other thing. And he gives them permission. For me, it felt like when I read it, an act of compassion. And maybe the Greek takes us in a different direction. But if it doesn't, then what is that about? That God might have compassion even for the demons. It doesn't mean, in the story, as we saw, doesn't mean the demons get to win, right? They still get cast out of the man. Sure, they got what they wanted, but the pigs all ended up drowned. So it's not like he rewards them or uh, yeah, he doesn't reward them, but he does maybe have compassion for them. What is that? And how big is God's love? Exactly. How big is God's love? Uh, so maybe that's what I'm sitting with this day with this passage.
And
Oof.
they said, sure,
Yeah.
they got what they wanted.
Right. Maybe it wasn't good, but
Yeah,
it didn't lead to life. It didn't lead to
yeah,
abundance. It led
but,
to more death.
but
But
they
right.
got what they wanted, which
Yeah.
means that we'll get what we want.
That sort of goes back to when the people asked Jesus to leave, it just says he got in a boat and he left. He didn't make a big stink about it. He didn't tell them, well, you all are going to regret this decision. He just quietly got in a boat and left, leaving a man, though, to proclaim the good news to them still.
Mhm.
So not without hope, not without, hope. And I've been reticent to say this because I might be wrong. And some reason it's coming out now. So hopefully I'm not. Um, might be a different story, but there is a story um where Jesus does this and he comes back. And they are more receptive the second time.
Oh,
The,
yeah.
the town is more open to receiving him, after he's left. And it might be the Samaritans, and it might be a Samaritan story, and I might be conflating some stories. But my point is that there's some hope in that this man is left to proclaim good news, even after they're so scared and they say, just leave us alone. We don't want this. We don't want this healing. We don't want this good news. We don't want any of this inclusivity and, care and compassion. One person is left who's going to continue to bear witness to its power, and it slowly changes hearts. That the next time he comes, they are more open to him and more open to receiving him.
Mhm.
Anyhow, we are at 102, so I'm going to bring us to a close. Thank you all for joining me this week. This is fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the next 2 weeks will be Reverend Canon Megan Anderson-Gart, because I will
Okay.
be leading VBS next week. Oh boy. And then the week after that, I will be on vacation. And that'll be nice. And so I will be back after all that.
Okay.
Yay.
Have a
Yeah.
wonderful vacation.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. And
Thank
be
you.
good to the kitties.
Yes, yes. I hope they're good to me. We
Make
have
sure
30
they're,
of them. We have 30 little kids who are going to be at
oh
this summer.
God.
Yeah. Oh my
Okay.
goodness. Yep. All right. Well, thank you all. Take care.
Bye.
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 Thank you.